Kirk Cousins is officially out for the rest of the 2023 season. Will Minnesota be buyers or sellers at the NFL trade deadline? I'll give you my take here in just a second. Then also, Derrick Henry, could he be on his way to the Baltimore Ravens? The rumor mill is spinning for sure right now. Then also, Montez Sweat, could he be headed to the Atlanta Falcons? And then finally, I'm going to tell you why the Los Angeles Rams may trade Aaron Donald before Tuesday's deadline. Before we get into today's NFL trade rumors, make sure you click that subscribe button for live trade deadline coverage tomorrow starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be great. And with that, let's get into today's show. Just before filming, we were hit with this breaking news action here in the National Football League where the New York Giants are trading interior defensive lineman Leonard Williams to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for a second-round pick in 2024 and a 2025 fifth-round pick. This comes from Tom Pelissero. Definitely an interesting situation there. We're not going to go too in-depth with this right now. There's going to be other videos that come up later going more in-depth with these trades. But overall, this is definitely a very big developing story here in the National Football League. Leonard Williams is now a Seattle Seahawk. So let's get into these NFL trade rumors on the docket today, starting with the Minnesota Vikings, where Mike Florio, Vikings fan himself, reports that Minnesota will not be looking to trade Danielle Hunter before the trade deadline unless they get an offer that they simply cannot refuse. Now, what does that entail? An offer they can't refuse? Who knows? But at this point, I think that's really intriguing to me because with Kirk Cousins officially out with a torn Achilles for the rest of the 2023 NFL season, I think a lot of people assumed that the Vikings, even though they're sitting at 4-4 right now, would probably be sellers at the deadline. And Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith, some of these other pieces that the Vikings have could be on the chopping block. But apparently, according to Mike Florio, if you believe his reporting here, the Vikings are not going to be looking to sell players like Danielle Hunter and Harrison Smith here before Tuesday's deadline. So if they're not selling, does that mean that they're going to be buying now? I mean, seriously, look at this situation with Kirk Cousins out and you're not selling. To me, that says Minnesota's going to try to trade for a veteran quarterback here to replace Kirk Cousins for the rest of the 2023 season. Right now, they have Nick Mullins. Right now, they have Jaron Hall, who finished the game against the Packers in Week 8. They don't have a lot of great options right now in Minnesota. Right now, you're sitting at 4-4. That defense is playing a lot better than they did last year under new defensive coordinator Brian Flores. And the potential options here are slim, but I think there's a couple options that could work. Number one, you could go give a call to Tennessee. Of course, Will Levis just had a 4-touchdown game in his first start as an NFL pro. You might give a call to Tennessee here and say, hey, what's the asking price for a Ryan Tannehill? Now, it could be a fifth-round pick, could be a sixth-round pick. Who knows what Tennessee's price is? But usually, the reason why you don't usually look for a trade for a quarterback mid-season is because they got to learn a brand new playbook. It's very difficult for a quarterback to switch teams mid-season because they got to learn the entire offense within a week and they have to be ready to go. And that's just really, really difficult on any human being to get themselves ready that quickly. However, Ryan Tannehill with the Tennessee Titans, West Coast offense there in Tennessee, West Coast offense there in Minnesota. The terminology is going to be similar. It might not be the exact same, but it would be a more smooth transition for Minnesota to go and get a guy like Ryan Tannehill. And remember, just a couple of seasons ago, Tannehill was the starting quarterback on the team that was the number 1 seed in the AFC, the entire conference. All right, so Ryan Tannehill, I think, is probably the number 1 option. But if you're looking for another option, you could go get Jacoby Brissett, backup quarterback for the Washington Commanders right now. Sam Howell is playing well. And then also, Brissett played in a very similar system to Minnesota's with the Cleveland Browns last season. So I definitely think that is an option as well. Now, let me know down there in the comments section, will the Vikings trade for a quarterback before the deadline passes, or are they going to stick with what they have? Type T if you think they're going to make a trade, or type N if you don't think a trade happens. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. Now let's talk about Derrick Henry a little bit here, where Jay Glazer reports that there is still one NFL team that is in trade talks to acquire Derrick Henry before the deadline. Now, of course, a report surfaced on Sunday that the Titans are not looking to trade Derrick Henry whatsoever. But I really don't understand that because Derrick Henry is in the last year of his current deal. I don't think Tennessee is going to re-sign him this offseason. And right now, I think Tennessee's season is relatively over. I mean, I like Mike Vrabel. I mean, I think overall they're a decent football team, but I don't think they're going to be a playoff contender this year. They got a rookie quarterback taking over the reins under center right now. But last week, Buck Rising, a Tennessee Titans reporter, reported that the Baltimore Ravens was the team that was most interested in Derrick Henry. So when this report comes out that there's still one team looking to trade for Henry, I got to think it's the Ravens. And honestly, Derrick Henry, you match that guy up with the talents of Lamar Jackson and the read options that you would have to deal with as a defense. I mean, that is super, super scary. I mean, seriously. I mean, this Ravens team right now, sitting at 6-2, they're already one of the best teams in the National Football League, arguably a top 10 team or top 5 team in this league right now. You add Derrick Henry to that mix, they might enter the top 3 conversation, if you ask me. Now, if I was the Titans, I would definitely try to get something for Derrick Henry. I really don't think it makes a whole lot of sense unless you're really trying to make the playoffs this year with the Tennessee Titans, and you're going to keep DeAndre Hopkins and you're going to keep Derrick Henry. I would trade probably both of them away, personally. I mean, you already got rid of Kevin Byard for a bag of peanuts to the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you're gonna dip your toe in the water here, I would just go all the way in the pool. I would trade all of your available assets at this point in time, and that includes Derrick Henry, that includes DeAndre Hopkins, that includes anybody on a 1-year contract here in Tennessee. And if I were Tennessee, I would absolutely try to get rid of Derrick Henry for a decent price right now. Now, coming up, could Montez Sweat, Chase Young, or Jonathan Allen be dealt by the Washington Commanders? I'm going to let you know here in just a second. But first, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And if you're looking for an awesome way, an addictive way, if I must say so myself, to spice up your game days this NFL season, then Prize Picks is going to be perfect for you. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. And you might be asking yourself, Jack, how does daily fantasy work? Well, here's how. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go for more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So let's take a look at my Monday Night Football entry. Tonight, I've got the more on Jared Goff passing yards. I've got the more on Devontae Adams receiving yards. And I've got the less on Jahmyr Gibbs rushing yards. You can get yours in before the start of Monday Night Football tonight. So check it out now at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a deposit match up to $100 today. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks that are just looking to take advantage of you. With Prize Picks, it takes less than 60 seconds to make your picks. So get started right away. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS for a deposit match up to $100 today. So now the trade rumors there in Washington are definitely buzzing after a 3-5 start to their 2023 campaign. And the latest one comes from Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, who reports that the Atlanta Falcons have offered the Commanders a 3rd-round pick in exchange for Montez Sweat. Now that the Leonard Williams trade has come through, though, with a 2nd and a 5 for Leonard Williams, I really don't think the Commanders are going to let go of either one of their edge rushers for anything less than a 2nd and an additional pick at this point. So I think that's why a trade hasn't come to fruition here between Atlanta and Washington. And Montez is not the only edge rusher on the Commanders roster that is getting trade rumors surrounding him right now. Chase Young has been linked to the Chicago Bears by Mike Florio in recent days as well. Our Bears host, Harrison Graham, is really hoping that Chase Young becomes a Chicago Bear here in the coming days. But just like Montez Sweat, I really don't think the Commanders are going to part ways with either of these guys because the trade market has now been set with Leonard Williams getting a 2nd and a 5th. I think you're probably going to have to give up at least a 2nd and a 4th to get one of these guys on your roster. And right now, Jay Glazer, Fox Sports reporter, has also reported that the Commanders will trade either Montez Sweat, Chase Young, or Jonathan Allen before the trade deadline passes tomorrow afternoon. I really don't think Jonathan Allen is going to get dealt unless he demands a trade. I don't know behind the scenes. Has he demanded a trade behind the scenes? I don't know the answer to that. But that's really the only way I see Jonathan Allen getting traded. But absolutely, I could see Montez Sweat or Chase Young, one of those guys being dealt before the deadline for a pretty decent price. They're both very productive edge rushers. You're going to have to pay quite a bit to get one of those guys on your roster. And honestly, I don't think that Ron Rivera wants to trade one of these defensive linemen. Right now, his job is on the line. He needs to make the playoffs this year in order to save his job. They have a new ownership group in Washington. They don't owe Rivera anything. And if Rivera misses the playoffs for now the third straight season there in Washington, I think he's going to get the boot, and the new owners are going to implement their guy for the future moving forward. So I think Rivera wants to keep all of these pieces on this defensive line intact to try to get him into the playoffs. But let me know what you guys think. Which Commanders defensive lineman will get traded before the trade deadline? Type JA for Jonathan Allen, CY for Chase Young, or MS for Montez Sweat. All right, now the last topic that we're going to be talking about today is Aaron Donald. And I'm going to lay out a case here for why Aaron Donald may get traded before tomorrow's deadline and why you shouldn't be shocked if the Rams decide to part ways with the star defensive tackle. Now, Donald still has another year left on his contract after this season. And right now, Donald is playing extremely well. So you might be asking yourselves, why would the Rams get rid of this guy, right? 33 tackles so far this year, 10 tackles for loss, 38 pressures, and 4.5 sacks. Pretty decent production. And then you pair that with the Pro Football Focus grade. I mean, it's always been great throughout his career. It is the lowest that he's ever had in his career, and he's still grading as a top 3 defensive tackle in the National Football League. His 2023 PFF grade is currently sitting at an 89.8, and it's never been below a 90 in his NFL career, dating back to when he was still playing for the St. Louis Rams back in 2014. This guy is inarguably, in my opinion, the best defensive player to ever play the game of football. Lawrence Taylor, yeah. J.J. Watt in his prime, yeah. But this guy, over a whole decade, has put together just absolute domination from the interior of the defensive line, an extremely valuable position. And right now, the Rams are sitting at 3-5. And let's be honest about this Rams team. I like Sean McVay as the head coach. I think Matthew Stafford is still a pretty darn good quarterback. He's got a couple nice receivers in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. But overall, this roster needs a lot of growing. They need to rebuild a little bit here, especially on the defensive side of the football. In my opinion, the offensive line needs retooling. All this stuff, they're just probably not going to be a legitimate contender this season, in my opinion. So there's an argument to be made to start that rebuild now by getting some very valuable draft capital in exchange for Aaron Donald. Because listen, this guy's a superstar player still on the interior of the defensive line. There's a ton of championship level teams that would love to add Aaron Donald to their roster for the next 2 years. And I think they'd probably be willing to part ways with at least a first-round pick in order to get that done. So if you are the Rams front office right now, if you're the Rams GM, what do you guys think right now? Would you trade a first-round pick in exchange for Aaron Donald? Would you consider doing something like that right now, even though you still have Donald under contract for another season? Type yes or type no. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comments section. And then before I say goodbye today, a little bit of additional NFL news today. The Buffalo Bills are signing running back Leonard Fournette. Former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Jacksonville Jaguar, former top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Definitely an intriguing name to keep your eye on. Damian Harris definitely suffered a very serious injury a couple weeks back for the Buffalo Bills. They're supplementing this roster now by adding Leonard Fournette to the fold. Will definitely be interesting to see how playoff Lenny does here in Buffalo. That'll be it for me today, guys. Really do appreciate all of your support. Again, make sure you click that subscribe button for me right now and join us tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, for our NFL trade deadline coverage. I will see you guys then, and until then, peace, guys.